Okay, we are on. Hello everybody. Salamatlarby. Bayramınızlar menen. Happy holiday. Today we are going to continue our regular seminar with Pamela. Pamela, welcome.
Thank you.
She's going to talk about teaching English online as an intensive course.
Yes.
Pamela, you can share your screen.
Okay. Okay, so can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay,
It's
great.
on.
All right. So we're going to talk about teaching. So there's two things that we are keeping in mind here. One is teaching online, and the other is teaching in an intensive. So an intensive is kind of a unique way of teaching language because it's not really the optimum way to really learn something well. To teach in a short period of time a lot of material is not as good as teaching in a more slowly or evenly paced over a long period of time. So you get more time to really work through the material, to really understand it. It's better. I've also said within a week, it's better to study 20 minutes a day consistently than 3 hours a day, 2 days a week, right? It works better for our brains to be a little bit more moderately paced and not take in so much information at once. But there are times when we do teach intensively that are very effective or lead to something being more effective. So sometimes if you are going to be preparing to study in another country or live in another country, or if you are studying or living in another country and you need an introduction to the language, so something to give you a certain basis of the knowledge of the language so you can at least start to communicate. And maybe you start very intensively and then later you go a little bit slower. So it's not so much material day after day. So for example, I can use myself as an example in Peace Corps. We study intensively for 3 months. So this is, I think, between 5 and 6 hours a day, and also practicing living with our Kyrgyz family. Then when we go to our regular site after 3 months, then we get 4 hours a week of language instruction plus practice. So it can be a beginning. Like, you're not going to study intensively your whole life. It can be a start, a basis, and then with the idea that you use whatever you have gotten from there and then go a little bit more of a reasonable pace. It can also be a preparation for a trip. So I did this also. I did a 2-week intensive course with one teacher to learn Portuguese before going to Brazil. So I didn't retain a lot, but I got a lot of basic information that I needed just to fulfill that goal. I've also done kind of similar to Peace Corps, where I start in a language in another country and do an intensive to learn the language and really interact with the people in the country so that I understand what is going on around me and how to communicate, how to find food, how to find the bus, and how to make friends and solve problems and to, enjoy the culture because speaking the language it makes you enjoy the culture more. And then there's also, I've done intensive courses before where it was to go to the next level. I was not a beginner, but I wanted to really improve my language. And so you just focus on that language at kind of an intermediate or advanced level so that you can just have that be something you're focusing on for that time. You're not distracted by other things. Get a lot of practice in, get some new stuff in, and then again, not do it for so long because you might not have time to continue doing that. And that has been also something that I've done. Or, for example, I already knew quite a bit of Arabic, but then when I studied in Morocco, I was studying Moroccan Arabic. So it was a new form of the language, but it was different enough. I needed instruction, but it was familiar enough that I was really learning a lot, and I was able to practice and communicate. And I was in the country, so I was able to practice it there too. So some of those scenarios are a little bit different than what we will be talking about probably for your students. Oh, the other scenario is test preparation. So we have talked about test preparation courses specifically, and how it's a certain period of time that you take to prepare for like the IELTS or the TOEFL or something like that. So that could be something where they need some kind of an intensive hours. They need to really study and dedicate, maybe 5 hours a day, maybe whatever, that they need a guided teacher with that. But again, those you need to be certified or trained specifically to prepare people to take those tests. So those are different. I know maybe some of you have also done intensive tutoring before Olympiad. So that could also be something. It's like something where you're preparing for something specific. So specific is going to be, of course, back to our regular, SMART goals that we come back to again and again. The S for specific. So with any kind of intensive, of course, you have some kind of a specific target. Why are you teaching an intensive? You want the students to get to a certain level. You have some kind of a target in mind of what you want them to accomplish by the end of the time. And you have a specific amount of time you are looking at, right? So your goals are going to be dependent upon that, how much time you have, how many students are in the course, how long the classes meet each day. So is it 3 hours? Is it 2 hours? Is it 5 hours or 6 hours? The level. What kind of things are you going to get for a certain level? So for absolute beginners, 6 hours a day to begin with is maybe not that helpful. The ages also, you won't have very young children being 6 hours a day in a language class. They're just not going to retain it. They're not going to be receptive. Their brains won't, that's just not the way that they work. They need a lot of variety, and they need a little bit of stuff, and to really have fun with it. So I would say if you really were trying to gear an intensive, especially online for young learners, we're talking maybe 3, 4, 5, 6th grade, it's probably not going to be the best experience for them. We'll see some of the things that you can maybe make it a little better for them. Yeah, why are they taking the course? So you might have a reason why you are offering the course, whether it is 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. All of those are, acceptable lengths of time for an intensive course. But so why are you offering it? What is the purpose in the course you're offering? And why are the students coming? What are their goals? So it was very easy in Peace Corps, of course. Everybody was there for the same reason. We all had the same exact goals. We were learning the language so we could pass the language test at the end of the 3 months, and then go do our 2 years of service in our villages and towns and cities in the country of Kyrgyzstan. So we needed a certain level of Kyrgyz to do that. We all had the same goals. We all wanted to reach the same targets. We all wanted to do the same job. And for example, when I did that study of Arabic in Morocco, I had a very different reason for going there than some of my classmates did. We all had different goals. We were in the same level courses and the same classes, but we had different reasons. We had different levels coming in. That's another thing. Everybody came in to Peace Corps as, beginners of Kyrgyz. Well, we had one Turkish speaker, so she was a little bit ahead of everybody else, but everybody else it was new. We had to learn most of us had to learn the alphabet. Some already spoke Russian, but you might in an intensive course have multi-level class also. So thinking you're teaching a multi-level class online and you're trying to do it intensively several hours a day over a short or mid period of time. So take all of those into account when making your SMART goals. Make it specific what you are doing. Is it test preparation? Is it Olympiad preparation? Is it to go on a trip? Is it to study abroad? Is it to start living in another country? Is it just to get to a certain level and then again taper off? And do maybe just a couple hours a week after that? Is it to introduce the language in an intensive way, teach a lot, and then give them that basis and then go on? So think about the specific thing that you are offering them to do, what you want them to get out of that amount of time. Measurable. So we'll talk a little bit about assessments. How are you going to assess that they have how are you going to assess success? Are you going to give a test? Are you going to give a diagnostic at the beginning? Are you going to do continuous assessments? How are you going to, is it just going to be attendance and participation? Or is it going to be something that they have to produce? It might be a lot of work for you to constantly be giving homework if it's an intensive. Is it just going to be a midterm and a final? How are you going to measure? The A, I feel here, is the most important one. Make sure this is achievable. So when we have intensive courses, you want to make sure up front you let the students know that what is expected of them, and you make sure that you have chosen a goal that is something that they can do. Is it a realistic goal? Is it something that within 2 weeks you can do? Is it something within 3 months you can do? If you set it too high of a goal, don't expect they're going to be fluent in 3 months, right? So they told us in Peace Corps at the beginning of the 3 months, we will test you at the end of the 3 months. We want you to speak like a toddler. A toddler, if we don't know this word, it's a fun word. It means a child around age 3 years old. So they were very realistic. They set the achievable goal that we will be communicating like a native speaker, but a very young one. So they didn't expect us to speak like we would speak our own language at our age. That's just not achievable. It's not realistic. People study years and years to get fluent in a language. So 3 months is not going to do it. When I was prepping for my Brazil trip, I made sure that I had achievable expectations for myself and my teacher of what I could do in 2 weeks. So I knew I wasn't going to be fluent in Portuguese. I knew I wasn't going to be able to understand everything, but I did also know that where I was going, people did not speak English that much. So there were certain things I had to think about. What did I need out of this intensive? What did I need once I got to the country that I don't have now? I don't have greetings. I don't have basic question formations. I don't have numbers for money, for bus routes, left and right, straight, taxi, airplane, you know, any of bathrooms, any of those things I didn't have. So I needed the very basics, and I wanted somebody to, I didn't want to just do self-study because I wanted to practice speaking and some role plays, communication. So as much as we could get through with practicing Portuguese within 2 weeks, that I could feel confident with more than I had before. All I wanted was more than I had before. So if you have, again, test preparation or some kind of a, assessment that you want to give at the beginning and then check it again at the end, if that is something, a different goal that is more achievable for more advanced students, then you can be clear about that too. Say, I know you guys are all already at this level. You're very high. We want to take it higher. So you're taking this time to really just dedicate to your language study. And we expect that you're going to be doing this advanced thing at the end of the month, the 6 weeks, the whatever. Decide how long the classes, yes, I already said that. So the level and ages, student expectations, make sure the student expectations are achievable and realistic as well as yours. Relevant goes along with the specifics of your class, right? So you're going to make the class content relevant for what their specific goal is. So for example, my Brazilian trip preparation was not going to involve translations of novels or watching the news and understanding hand gestures or so. Like, it was going to be relevant to my trip. What did I needed the vocabulary that was related to the hotel I was staying at, the class I was taking there, how to get there, how to get home, how to ask for questions, how to ask for food, how to buy, you know, numbers and exchange, all that kind of stuff. That was going to be relevant to me. Later, if I decided to stick with Portuguese and I wanted to keep taking classes, and then later I took an intensive for understanding Portuguese literature and poetry, then that would be a relevant goal for that time. But this was a relevant goal for this, the intro and just going on the trip. So make sure it's relevant. And then time constrained, that is the nature of having an intensive, is you have this particular amount of time that you have to work with. So remember that SMART goals can be for the shortest period of time. It can be for your 40-minute lesson. It can even be for your introduction activity, right? It can be for 5 minutes. You can have a SMART goal. You can have a SMART goal for your lesson, for your week, for your intensive course, for your entire year, for 5 years, for your life, right? So you have, remember to apply these ideas, these concepts to anything that you are creating as far as education, and especially for something like an intensive. Okay, so then you have to decide based on what those goals are for the students, how many interactive hours. So we're going to treat this kind of like, how much of a hybrid class do you want? So it's a little bit tricky because it's online. And usually when we talk about a hybrid class or a blended class, we're talking about in person, like you are there in person in the classroom together, hours versus hours they will do at home, either with you on the computer or completely alone as homework. Now, because we're talking about having most of the hours online, that is kind of our interactive part of the course. That would be like, you are there on Zoom with them, you can see them, they can put their cameras on, you can talk, you can interact, you can show them things, you can answer questions in real time. How many of those interactive hours do you want to have as part of the course versus how many supplemental hours? So that would be what they're doing on their own. So if you're going to have a lot of interactive hours, if the bulk of it is going to be interacting with you, then you're not going to have that many supplemental hours. You're not going to give that much homework. So, and the other way is true as well. Like if you're going to give more homework, then have fewer hours. And then what kinds of activities can be done for homework and what kinds should be done with the class? So for example, speaking exercises, discussions, those will all be done interactively because you can't really do them on your own. And then maybe more of the writing or reading, some of the more receptive skills would be something that you could give for homework. So think about the level and the ages of the students. So the more beginning they are, the lower the level, the fewer stuff you want to give them to do on their own. You want to really guide them more towards the beginning. You don't give a whole lot of homework for students to figure out on their own if they have very little experience with the language on their own. If you are teaching university students, you might want them to do maybe most of it on their own, because we want independent learners, we want independent researchers, we really want them to take their education into their own hands and learn how to kind of teach themselves, and then you check in with them and be very clear about what the assignments are. And the ages, you don't want to give very young students too much stuff to do on their own. Remember, the A in SMART is achievable. So be realistic about what you can have very young students, very low levels do on their own. And also don't add too many homework assignments if you meet for a lot of hours. You might not even give homework every day. And I've taken courses like this as well. You just kind of maybe a little bit of review, or like tell them to review the new words they learned that day, but maybe not even homework every single day. If you're meeting every day for 6 hours, just let their brains rest when they get home, and then you can pick up the next day. And that has also worked pretty well. It's a little easier when you are in the country of the target language. So if they were in an English-speaking country, then they could just naturally practice at home. If they're not, then you might want to give a little bit of guided of like what you should review. But actual like big long homework exercises, if they've already spent 4 to 6 hours a day with their English, don't give them an hour of homework that night. And time management, as far as when you are in the classroom, make sure you include breaks. So breaks are really, really important. We need to let our brains like kind of reset a little bit, especially with the computers. If you notice, you can kind of go into like the computer, like constant computer looking at that is very much more tiring than being in person. It's harder to understand what is being said. It's kind of harder to listen, even if it's at the right volume. There's a lot of things that are very, that make it a lot more difficult than being in person and being able to interact. It's very unnatural. And it is not, it's that one more level removed from an authentic language experience and language exchange. Make sure you also, so the breaks should be, I would say every 20 minutes, maybe give like a 2-minute bathroom break or just like a brain break. Every hour, maybe have a longer break. So every 20 minutes, say, let's do a 10-minute break. If you're going to be 6 hours long, make sure you give an hour for lunch. And make sure you provide a variety of exercises and make sure that you have a lot of exercises. So you have things lasting 10, 20 minutes. Make sure it's not you do one thing for an entire hour, one thing for 2 hours. We don't want to read for an hour. We don't want to watch something for an hour. a variety of different exercises that vary in skills and what they're demanding of the students. Keep in mind the law of diminishing returns. So this is the idea that the longer you do something in one setting, the less you benefit from it. So if you are studying English for 6 hours straight, you're going to be more effective in that first hour than you are in the 6th hour. Your brain just cannot keep up with that level of intensity and being sharp. It will get tired. So the way to get around that and to try to keep everything effective is, as I said, breaks. Make sure you let them have breaks. Make sure you let them have breaks to check their phones, speak Kyrgyz with each other if they need to, go to the bathroom, take that hour for lunch, and they can kind of reset. They can even maybe just rest for a little bit and then come back. But we want to kind of have them not be, it's like walking up a hill, right? It's better to walk some, stop, take a rest, catch your breath, get strong again, and then walk a little bit more rather than run up the hill all as fast as you can. It's easier for your body. So keep the introduction of newer and more challenging language structures to the beginning of class, and then reserve the last hour or so, depending on how long, for review and kind of fun activities. And this is also where you can do some of like games or watching something in the middle of the week too. I've even had you can break the rules sometimes. I've even had teachers, show us a movie that is in the language with English subtitles for me. So you can show an English movie with Russian subtitles. They're listening to it. They're, enjoying it. They're still being exposed to English. But if you're talking about one, hour and a half or however long the movie is within the whole week, that's acceptable. Maybe on a Wednesday afternoon, like right in the middle of an intensive week, or Friday at the end when their brains are like really full. But make sure this is, you understand this is not being lazy. This is not being not working hard enough. This is important. This is what your brain needs to rest. We need to sleep every night, and we need to take breaks for our brain when we are learning new things. We need to be relaxed, happy, comfortable, and we need to let ourselves rest when we need the rest. We don't want to overwork our brain. It's just like a muscle. And make sure also that we are structuring the lessons as in covering all 4 skills each day. So this is a great way also to really think about how to do that, the variety of activities, as I just mentioned. If you think about having 8 exercises in the day, 2 exercises that cover each skill, or maybe even twice that, then you'll have as many exercises as you need to get through the lesson. You want to keep the themes pretty much the same from day to day, but as far as the skills, you want the skills to be mixed up. So you don't want to spend Monday doing reading, and then Tuesday doing listening, and then Wednesday doing writing, right? You want to do reading, writing, listening, speaking every single day, but stick to the topic so that they're within the same topic every single day. It's more motivating too, because they'll be thinking, wow, I'm really improving in talking about, the rooms in the home and the appliances in the kitchen and the furniture, and now I know the house. I know what to do. And you can do a lot of fun activities with having them bring things from the house and say the name of them or ask the name of them or whatever. There's a lot of interactive things you can still do while you're online. You can have readings with comprehension. You can find things on YouTube. So get all those skills, maintain 1 theme per day. and make sure you have a variety of exercises to cover all those things. And then we talked a little bit about this at the beginning, but assessing if they've had a successful intensive. So this really starts with what your goal was, what your specific goal was in teaching this and with offering it. So we kind of want to work backwards in a way. This is a great way to work with the test is you write the test first, and then you figure out how to teach those things that are on the test. So this is called teaching to the test. It has its pros and cons. It's criticized a lot. But if you have a really good test, then that can be a good way to work. You definitely want to make sure that your tests and if you're going to grade them, that your tests and your activities and your assignments and your classes and your lessons are planned so that you are preparing them for success. They are preparing enough. You're preparing them enough to be able to succeed on the test, right? So if you have most of the things on the test are not in your class, then that's not really an effective way to assess them, right? You're not going to find a lot of success. You're not going to find a lot of the students passing. So you can do that. You can administer a diagnostic at the beginning. If you don't have a test that you have come up with, or you don't know who's going to be in your class and you want to know the levels, and then you have to kind of create day to day or week to week, administer a diagnostic test. So give them a test to see what level they are at when they come into your class. This is a fun one too. Collect a writing sample at the beginning. And then once you work on writing and you are really working a lot on those skills and developing them, return it, have them write another paper and then return that to them at the end. And they can see how much that they have improved. They can say, wow, my sentences really weren't complete, or my spelling was very bad, or even my writing didn't look good. The letters looked sloppy, or I was only able to write 25 words about this topic, and now I'm writing 80 words, or this is a fun thing, and it's also very motivating for them. So figure out what it is that, once you figure out what the point of the course is, figure out how you're going to assess them. You don't have to give one big test at the end either. It can be continuous. So you can give tests every week or twice a week. So you can decide if you want to do it like that. Okay, so I don't really have anything more. These are just some of my tips. So I'm just going to open it to questions now.
Thank you very much, Pamela.
You're
Good
welcome.
ideas.
Okay, so
yeah,
hi, yes. Hello, everybody's always so friendly in the comments. Hello, and thank you all for coming. Good morning to you guys, and good evening to me. Yes.
From Kenjebu.
Okay. And yes, in what way can we check the students' homework on online teaching? So they can take pictures of their homework if they wrote it. They can email you. They can send voice notes if it is something that they have to write a dialogue and they want to say it instead. You can create documents also. I can actually give a tutorial on using Google Docs at some point, because you can have them type up on Google Docs. It's free, and you can use it on your phone or on your laptop or on a desktop computer. As long as you have a Gmail account, then, and I'm assuming everybody has email. Is that how they get here? Or just through Facebook? Or so? If you have a Facebook account, you can have a Gmail account as well. So you can have them upload their document to your Drive, and then you can see it there as well. So you can have everything shared. You can have them share their screen, and you can go through, and you can actually have everybody help correct homework. Might be a fun thing too, if they feel comfortable, if everybody feels comfortable with that. If maybe you can have some students volunteer, like, yes, I would like the class to help correct my homework. And that could be a group thing for the class to do. And you will have time, because if it's an intensive, if you have, between 3 and 6 hours a day to do your stuff, then you can have people correct homework. It'd be beneficial for everybody. So that's a good question, and I hope I gave some good solutions. Okay. What about reading exercises? Yeah, so reading exercises could be done online. You can, as I'm doing now, share the screen, and you can be having everybody read the same thing. You can send them something to read to prepare at home. It could be homework, and then you discuss it the next day, if you want to focus more on discussion rather than reading in class at the time. So that's another thing that's good with technology now, is that we can share it, one thing. That's another thing. You can share the reading exercise with a Google document. They can open it at home and read it there. So yeah, you can do it in class, or you can do it as homework. Quality of online courses. Yeah, that's, well, I mean, I think that you have to make sure that the students are participating. So make sure they keep their cameras on, and they are, you can have the power to mute them. I'm sure you already know that sometimes they need to be muted if they don't want to mute themselves. I do know that it's a little bit more difficult. I've had some challenges as well with, if a student doesn't want to speak up in class online, they're at home, we can tell them, please say something, and they don't. It's a lot easier in person. It's more friendly, and they are right there. They will speak if you ask them to. So it is a little bit challenging. So that's, again, why I say it's not the best idea for younger learners or for very new beginners, because we want them to be confident, and we want them to be really interested. We want them to be the kind that want to learn and want to take part in this, and to interact a lot and be motivated to participate in class. So I think making sure that you have students that are all really interested in being there, and they have the same goals in mind that you do, will make things a lot easier. But if you have students that, are there, you can see their name, they're not turning the camera on, they're always muted, you ask if people have ideas, they don't, or they say, oh, my camera doesn't work. That's a perfect excuse. Or my volume isn't working. They put in the chat, oh, I can't, what can you do about that? If they are in the classroom with you, they can't use this excuse, right? They are there. Of course you can speak. You're here. So the quality is really going to be dependent on who shows up and how much they want to work with you. What topics? Oh, yeah, that's the question for you guys. Okay. How do you know they're cheating, if they're cheating on online testing? Yeah. So, oh, and then Kenji had another one. Okay. So, there's different ways to check that. So some of it really just does have to be what we call the honor system. We won't be able to tell if you give a homework assignment. Of course, we already knew this. If you give homework, somebody else can do it, and then you come in the next day and, hand it to you. That happens. If you have your assessments be in real time, I took a class recently, and they had they had a certain amount of questions we had to answer within 30 minutes. And we could still look at the notes, right? But we still only had 30 minutes. So if we didn't know enough about the information to know where to find it, we wouldn't have it done in 30 minutes anyway. So I would say give a reasonable time restriction. And if they can't, even with open note test, do give the right answers, then they really didn't know it that well. If they get 100%, but you know that they use their notes a little bit, they already knew enough of where to find in their notes or where to find in the book. But make it challenging enough that that half hour is difficult to do, but also realistic enough that they can do it within that time. You can also do oral tests. So if a student is talking to you, you can set up times for the end of the course and say, okay, I'm going to talk to this student for 20 minutes, just this one student, or maybe not 20 minutes, but maybe 5 to 10 minutes. And, there's no way for them to cheat if they're talking to you. You ask a question, they don't know what question you're going to ask. So they can't, it's not like they can read something that is written down already or memorize something. They have to know the language well enough to have that conversation with you. So that's a really good way to do it. And that's, again, why maybe continuous assessments are good. How much are these people participating? How much are they writing in the chat box, practicing their writing? How much are they speaking to you? What are their answers? Who is first answering the listening exercise questions? So just checking every day who is really grasping the material and participating can also be a good way to assess in the online format without worrying about a big problem with cheating at the end if you give them a big test. So good question. Writing exercises, I would give that for homework as well. I think that, if you give, if you skew the in-class stuff to more of the productive skills, and then doing some guided, productive skills of speaking, and then do some receptive and question and answer and some activities and games, and then have a little bit of writing for homework. And again, if they cheat, they have somebody else do it for them, or they copy from something, then they're the ones that are going to miss out on that, because we really need to be motivated and take responsibility for our own education and know that, well, the teacher doesn't want something that somebody else wrote. The teacher doesn't want something from a book. The teacher wants to see where my mistakes are so that I can improve. So let them know that cheating is really only, it's a cliche, but cheating is really only hurting yourself. You're not, and a way to get around that too is don't give points to the homework. So don't have that be part of the grade. Have the assessments in class and what they're producing be part of the grade, their participation, and have maybe a test at the end of the week or at the end of the class. But say, I'm not grading the homework, so you don't have to worry about having it be perfect. I just want you to turn it in, or just give them points for turning it in. Say, I'm not going to give you a 5 if you have no mistakes and a 1 if you have 12 mistakes. I'm just going to ask if you did it, and you show that you tried, then you get the full points for turning in the homework. Then that they're more likely not to cheat, because there's no extra benefit for getting something perfect, so they don't need to cheat that way. And then they'll get more feedback on how to improve their writing. Kinesthetic learners, yeah, that's rough. I know it's rough if you are a kinesthetic learner, if you're more about interaction. That's why, you can try to be creative. If you are doing something about, stuff in the house. Say, can you get me something blue? And then they have to bring something blue to show you, or so, you know, at least that's something, if it's a very low level. Or you can talk about your favorite thing in your room, or do a little bit like, can you take me on a tour of your of your room and talk about, you know, the things, or your kitchen or something, and, you know, have them interact with their environment a little bit. That can bring a little bit of that. But yeah, I know it's rough in an online class. People who do like to learn through tactile, or you can also assign homework that is to make a poster, or to a collage where you cut out pictures from a magazine and put them all together on one paper. You can assign that for homework. Okay, so what, Ernest, about feedback? Oh yeah, so feedback, giving feedback for students. Yeah, I guess it would be, you know, the same way as you would give it in class. So if you use Google Docs for writing, you can type in your feedback. There's boxes for you to do that. If it's going to be in a speaking discussion class, the same as when you are in person. You wait for them to finish talking. You take notes of, you know, one or two major mistakes or errors. Ask if this was correct. Ask the student if it was correct. Ask the class if it was correct. Ask them what the correct answer was. If they said no, it's incorrect. So pretty much the same. Yeah, not too different. It's difficult to motivate them. Yeah, I know. I would say making sure that you keep the exercises short, quick, fun, relevant. You give those breaks. That's going to be more motivating than if you say, okay, today we're going to spend all day reading from this book and no breaks, and you're done when you're done. Like, that's going to be very demotivating. But if you keep it like you're changing what you're doing, you're asking all of them to participate, you're making sure that they get those little breaks and rewards somehow, depending on the age. But again, I said it's kind of better for older students because they're already more motivated and they have the interest to do it. Usually an intensive, I mean, I guess some parents can sign their young kids up for an intensive and they'll want them to do that. But usually the intensive I took, I signed up for myself. I wanted to be there. So yeah, motivation really has to come from within. There's a lot the teacher can do to help, but the student has to want to be there. And it's difficult to motivate others and to inspire them, whether you are in person or online. I know that is very true.
Okay, thank you very much,
Or
Pamela.
Manas, you have questions?
Yes, I was going to ask you about content of intensive teaching, like syllabus for intensive teaching. What like we should take into account while designing our syllabus for intensive course?
Yeah, so that will really depend on the goals of what the course is going to be. So if, as I said, if it's going to be for travel, then you want the basic travel vocabulary, phrases, understanding signs, meanings, and landmarks, geography, directions, all of that. Food. If you want them to maybe be just ahead in when they go back to school, they just want to be a little bit more ahead of everybody else. You can use the regular syllabus and just go by that. You know, when I've taken some intensive courses, they just use the regular book that comes with a longer class, but they just do it quicker. So it really just depends on the goals of the course. And of course, the test prep, then you want to teach to the test. So.
And one more question, just for clarification: do American like colleges, universities, like have like suggest intensive English courses online?
Yeah, are there recommendations for that? I believe there are. So the intensive English courses that you can take through the US universities, there are ones that are student like paced, and I've taken some language courses online. I took a Spanish one from this, and they're free, or like maybe a very small fee. It's really not expensive at all. And they have the tests there, and then they have videos, and there are message boards. You can ask questions and have other students answer and things. But you don't have this much interaction like we do with our classes online, like you do with your classes online, like with Zoom. You can take other ones that are online through community colleges, and you can get that, but it's more expensive. It's just a lot. It's more expensive. But there are free ones, but you have to do more of the work. And I found it actually pretty frustrating with my Spanish one, because I didn't have the teacher there immediately to answer some of my questions, and I felt like some of the exercises were not so connected to what the lesson was. So it's, of course, the best number one is to study in person. Yes, I've used Coursera. I've used Coursera and edX. So Coursera, look for their Coursera and edX are really good. The Great Courses is the most expensive one, but they're very comprehensive. I've also taken courses from them. But I think Coursera is really good. That's the one that I was talking about with my Spanish, and with other, you can get other certificates. You can take other courses and get certificates. I have a certificate for blended learning from them. So, I mean, the Spanish course was good, but it also had some things that were frustrating. But if you have somebody to help you or guide you, or you probably have better English than I have Spanish, then I think it would be a good thing for you. There's also YouTube tutorials on English. Make sure you get a native speaker, though, because I've seen some things on YouTube that are, some people have gotten confused, and they're teaching things that are like incorrect to the whole world. So make sure you check out the and what's great also is in the comments in YouTube, when you see the video and there are comments underneath, people will say, "Oh, is that how you say that in England? I don't," or "This is not correct." Or they say, "No, this is how they say this in England or in Australia or in whatever." And so you can learn more about English there. I think I've learned a lot from YouTube comments, honestly, about a lot of different things. The quality of online education graduates are like traditional. You know what? It's too early to tell, really, because this is such a new thing. We don't really have the way to measure, and what is the quality we're measuring? Are we measuring the level of language? Are we measuring just the receptive skills? Are we measuring pedagogy? I mean, it's kind of, depending on what we're saying is the quality we want to talk about. how do we decide that something is better or worse? And it's very early to tell, so we don't know, because we haven't really had a whole lot of graduates coming out from this this format to compare to people who have gone through the traditional way. So that's a good question. My guess is that it's going to be different, and I don't know if it's going to be better or worse, but probably different. I think people are going to, if you had your entire education online, you probably are thinking differently going into the workforce. And then some of the jobs are going to be completely online now too. So, but yeah, good question. Something to think about. Maybe we'll think about that in our future trainings. We can have maybe philosophical discussions about the future of education. Something like that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Pamela. We haven't left questions or no comments.
No more? Okay.
Dear participants, thank you very much. Today it was like very interesting session with Pamela. Thank you, Pamela, for your useful suggestions, tips on intensive English. I hope we will continue our session next week. So I will let you know the topic of for the next session via WhatsApp. I will discuss with our teachers. Then I will let you know. Dear participants, dear teachers, thank you for your time, for joining us. If you couldn't join us online, you can find our today's session on our Facebook page, and you can review and leave your comments, write your comments there. Pamela, have a good night.
Thank you.
And the participants, have a good day. See you next week. Bye. Just